So you were talking as you were coming in about tech, right? Taking a look at our set here and everything else, and never having before being senator, dealing with TV on the regular basis that you do now.
I didn't do any of that that I can recall in my business, other than you'd speak in front of certain groups. But as a state house member, those 3 years, I think I did Indiana lawmakers a time or two.
Are you worried about the state of tech in America? I mean, we've got TikTok stuff going on.
I definitely am, because it's, to me, you look at the major companies, they all are a monopoly within their niche. You can say they kind of broadly sometimes compete with one another, but I'm a big believer that markets are defined by multiple players, an educated consumer, no barriers to entry, and full transparency and competition. That is a classic market, and I don't think they have that.
But if we're talking about social media, what in your view is the barrier?
When you amass so much power, and even if you do it well, they earned it through the marketplace. It'd be kind of like what was the barrier to entry when Standard Oil, wrapped up that much market. It would just be impossible to get a foothold. And sometimes I think you've got to acknowledge that before someone accumulates that much, you probably need to do something that's going to engender competition. I'm not a believer that you can have true competition or markets with just a player or two. That's an oligopoly. A monopoly is a regulated utility generally.
But is that an actual worthy function of government, to tell somebody they can't grow?
Not that they can't grow, but that if they grow into something to where it creates effectively barriers to entry that no one else can get into it at that level, you just got to look at it. It's peculiar because generally it takes plant and equipment. It isn't an idea that you crystallize into something like the tech industry has evolved into. But it looks like in tech, it's fairly easy when you look at the particular sectors of it that you can grow to where you then, in essence, become like a monopoly. And I'm not one that ever wants government to get involved to pick winners and losers, but I do want a framework that's going to at least allow someone to have a startup and grow into that. It looks like that's almost impossible currently.
Because no one ever, now maybe historically somebody could find it and share it with me, but no one ever says Coke is a monopoly. Right?
That's because you've got all kinds of other beverages out there. In this case, when you look at search engines, when you look at the particular niches of tech, you look at even a company like Amazon. They've got probably more real competition because in the retail sector, they're still a fairly small
But when it comes
entity.
to the server farm sector,
Not that.
right.
And that's where they make all their money. They're not making money on the brick and mortar part of their business. It's through the monopoly they got on their tech niches.
Through the sale of other people's brick and mortar.
Yeah.
Right. This idea of the role of government. Let me bring it to this race for governor.
Yeah.
In the state of Indiana. Is the LEAP district in Lebanon the role of government? Is that the proper role of state government, to buy land, bring the water access, and tell people, here's what we're doing with this, and you, the local resident, doesn't have a say?
I think if you quizzed every developer in the state that's maybe not part of that, they'd say that probably isn't the government's role. It would be to have a climate that makes development easy, to where you've got low taxes, regulations that aren't going to burden you from getting into it. But when you take that step to where you're buying the land, you're orchestrating it, you've gotten into the development business. And I think that is a slippery slope. It begs the question of, are you picking now winners and losers to come along with that? I was surprised that we did it.
So now you're Governor Braun. You changing this?
cat's out of the bag. I'd say that minimally you'd have to make sure that that doesn't come the new SOP, that it's not going to be something you necessarily
How would you
do
stop
more
it
of.
from being standard operating procedure for the Indiana Economic
I'm
Development
guessing the
Corporation?
governor, the CEO of the state, could probably weigh in on that fairly significantly. That's an area to where, to be honest, I feel comfortable. We were talking a little earlier about concentration in industries or government getting out of its wheelhouse. We jumped the size of our own state government, a pretty good jump from the prior budget to the one that we're in currently. And of course, next year will be a budget year. I'm one that wants to keep government as small and as effective as possible, the exact opposite of what our federal system has done over time.
Is there an argument that says that LEAP is actually effective, that this is the state government doing something that's going to have massive ripples of value, not only for the people in Lebanon, but people all across the state? You're bringing in Lilly, you're going to bring in this one, you're going to be able to create the growth. This is exactly the kind of shot in the arm development that Indiana needs, and big and bold. So is there an argument for that?
Well, I think anybody that enterprises through government likes to sell that idea of combining government with the private sector. To me, this is clear. It's something new for our state, and I guess we'll find out. Looks like the first thing that the cart got before the horse would be on the most basic commodity, water. If you talk to people in Tippecanoe County, they're in an uproar about it because
Right.
the water is going to have to come out of their aquifer, being pumped into a different one, drains in out of their own, water resource there. And for Indiana, a state that's probably got slightly above average rainfall, you'd never figure water would come into play. Well, we got 3 different parts of our state. You got plenty of water in the northern third because of the aquifers from the Great Lakes. You run into less of it where most of the population is in the center part. And down where I live, you've got to go 300 feet in some cases to get a home well. But we got 2 public reservoirs. So water is going to become, just like you see in the Southwest and in places that now it is a trade-off between growing a population, not having water-intensive businesses coming in, trading out agriculture as a heavy user of water. That's going to be one of the key variables going forward, state by state.
Yeah, well, we don't have to fight over the Colorado River here, but I want to go back to something you just said. We'll see. Well, if we'll see is the answer, then we're saying it's possible that a Braun administration would see this LEAP type of district as a value and could be replicated.
I'd say that's stretching it too far. Since it is going to probably be in motion, the toothpaste is not going to go back into the tube. You can probably enable it more once you're there. That is something that's already been put in motion by our current government. And I'll look at that just like I sized up how to take a little company that had 20 employees with a dream to grow it regionally and then nationally. That played out over 37 years. I'll have less time here in this job, but I'm going to feel very comfortable, Tony, in terms of of saying that it either has some value, it has no value, or you need to retool and you don't want to do any more of it. Remains to be seen. That's what I did for a living and grew a company on the average 20% over 37 years, never borrowed a penny doing it. So that is something I'm going to feel comfortable with. My gut tells me that there's been a lot of political engineering that went behind this idea that we'll see how it pans out. It's got a choppy start out of the gate.
Let's stick with things affecting the state of Indiana.
Yeah.
One of those things is the Family Services Administration, the FSSA, with $1 billion shortfall, Medicaid shortfall. We should be clear that this isn't actual missing dollars, right? We're not talking about money. We're talking about budgeting of money.
A miscalculation.
How does that happen? And how does it get fixed in a Braun administration?
Number one, you're dealing with one of the two programs at the federal government that's breaking the bank federally. Thank goodness we pay a portion of that. Medicare is going to go broke in 4 years. So there's a whole issue of whether Medicaid and Medicare can survive along its current constitution. Over time, I'm a believer that on a lot of the stuff the feds have been doing, how much of that have we been knocking out of the park? It looks to me the only thing we're knocking out of the park is going more deeply into debt, which is a whole other issue. But Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security are the main drivers of that. In general, lack of discipline at the federal level. So we will need to decide how much we want to be a part of it. Some states have embraced Medicaid, some have tried to avoid it, to do as little as possible. The need is going to be there for those that can't afford health care. I'm going to try to fix it by fixing the healthcare industry in Indiana that makes healthcare less expensive and with better outcomes. So how much of that you can do, I'd say if you're good, again, at avoiding surprises in a business that you've run for all those years, somebody was not paying attention to what the dynamics of that was about to have $1 million or $1 billion dollar mistake crop up. You can't afford too many of those. That's about half of our reserves.
That $1 billion mistake, the way it is being discussed to be covered is to say, you know, we take this money and we pay families to care for family members that have issues. Instead of paying a stranger for it, we pay you, the family, for it. It's very interesting. I don't think a lot of people knew that before it happened. Now they're saying, well, we could save $300 million of this billion if we change the way that that is paid and make these block payments. And these families are saying, wait a second, now who's going to take care of my son or my father or whoever it is? It's one thing to say somebody miscalculated. I'm asking how it gets solved in the Braun administration.
And then it's counterintuitive in a way, because you'd think if families were doing it, I think most people's impression would be that that was going to cost less than how it was done institutionally before. So I'm going to look at that to see exactly how it happened, if it was something that was a one-time glitch, or if it's going to repeat itself, then it's even a bigger issue. And then you'd have to find something other than that. You obviously can't afford to have $1 billion hit, or even a part of that that would occur on a repeat basis. So it's taking a need that I think is there. How do you take care of that particular service? And the big thing, Tony, I can tell you I'm going to do, this is no different than the myriad of things you had to do in out-competing your opponents, building a business. You're making choices all along the way. It'd be analogous to when I got sick and tired of hearing how lucky I was that my health insurance premiums are only going up 5 to 10%. That was back in 2008. And of course, it was the insurance company. And I got involved in that meeting. And if you'd want to take the time, I can tell you what I did. We may save it for another episode, but I had to fix something that was along the lines of a burgeoning issue. And for 10 years, I couldn't moderate it anymore by raising deductibles or changing underwriters. I became the health insurance company at that time because they were making so much money on the plan. I turned the whole system on its head, emphasizing wellness and prevention, turned my employees into healthcare consumers, saved over 50% out of the gate. We have healthier employees, and we've not had a premium increase now in 16 years. So that, to me, again, I heard it. I was appalled by the size of that issue, but you have to roll up your sleeves. And if you got the tools from your past experience and the expertise, and you're willing to take the political risk, you're going to find a way.
Well, let me try and drill down a little bit more of the concrete and not the abstract.
Yeah.
Is the answer to this shortfall to take the money out of the surplus?
Well, unless you're going to be able to make it up in some other type of savings along the way.
So not a tax increase in some
No,
other type
no,
of
no,
cut elsewhere
It
to
would
move
have to
the
be.
money into
To me, it looks
this.
like it's something you'd have to take out of your rainy day and then get to work on how you prevent it from ever happening again in the future, or you extract savings some other part of our state government. I'm going to go through each agency once we get there. I don't think any governor is really interested in that mostly. They maybe dish that off to their chief of staff. I think probably some of them are run well. I think probably some of them are not run well, and many in between. It relates to another thing like, how do you lower our income tax? Well, you do it by running your government more efficiently, and you can plow those savings into lowering income taxes. You can't axe it immediately.
Whoa! Don't jump ahead.
Well,
Don't be giving answers to questions I haven't asked yet. You are not in favor of getting rid of the income tax in the state of Indiana?
I am, but you couldn't do it, axe it. You couldn't get rid of it at once. It's 1/3 of our revenue stream. So no one would be able to extract in 1 year that kind of substitute for the combination of what savings, running it more efficiently would be, and the services you need to maintain.
But you do favor putting an end to the state income tax. So in the Braun
Ideally, yeah.
in the Braun administration, how does that work? How does that play out over days, weeks, months, years?
That would play out in terms of seeing how much better you can run our state government, find out which programs are redundant, find out which ones are not worth the cost of having, take those savings, quantify it, and you invest that in lower taxes.
So
I don't think any of my opponents would really have the skills to do that.
In the research that you've done about state government, you served in state government,
Yep.
Are there programs that you've already identified where you're like, yeah, that's got to go?
Not other than the 3 years I've been there, and I was on Ways and Means, so we would listen to every agency that wanted more money, and they generally always want more money. To me, our government should never grow faster than our economy is growing. Property taxes as well. That's a place where I've heard more complaints than I have really with income taxes, and that would have been a simple fix, and it's the tax bill people are worried about. Assessments have a tax rate applied to it, and that should never go up more than the growth of our economy, and that'd be an easy fix. You'd have municipalities and county governments maybe grousing about that, but you can't afford anything more than what your economy's growing at.
I agree with you that nothing has moved the Hoosier voter and the Hoosier taxpayer more than property taxes. And seeing what has taken place over this last year, you discuss that municipalities may grouse because the property taxes are local, they don't go to the state. What is your solution? And as a follow-up, is there a place within that for seniors on a fixed income or veterans to be told by the state of Indiana, you're done with property taxes. We got you. You're good. You're fine.
All I can tell you is that in the last 3 years, I've heard more complaints about that. Of course, that all occurred because we got a market-based assessment system, and the federal government inflated the economy, and real estate had a peculiar demand for it because people wanted to get out of places where they were shutting you down. And I don't think that's going to happen very often, but it did. And hardly ever does that stuff come back to where it was. And to me, what I'll look at is some type of mechanism that at least on assessments, we were capped at 1%, 2%, and 3%. But that doesn't make any difference. You still have tax rates that get applied to that. And if your assessments go way up, your tax rates will have to come down. And when you apply that equation, the bill shouldn't be going up more than what our economy has grown at the most, because people can't afford that. And it does disproportionately impact veterans, elderly on fixed incomes.
So in a Braun administration, there's no day one, here's how we're changing property taxes? There's still an investigation into what to do?
That one to me is pretty simple. That's one that as I flesh out what I'm going to do specifically after I win the primary, I'll put that stuff out. I can tell you property taxes, to me, are more existential, more immediate in terms of an issue than what we can do with income taxes. That's going to take something over time based upon savings and running things more efficiently to invest into that. And I feel good about it.
Take a sip. You always got to take a sip. That's a statement. That is a statement that you feel good about it. You feel good about what?
I feel good about the fact that that's an issue.
Property taxes.
Yes, because I heard it so much. I visit all 92 counties. I offer people to come to Jasper on Fridays. You hear a lot. No governor or senator probably does that in the country in terms of open office hours in your own hometown. That's been a blessing. I got people from all over the state. And there have been some counties that have said they've never seen a governor or a senator from our own state in them, and it's more than a handful.
Right.
And I just have heard that. That's a state issue. You can't do anything about it other than cite it, but that comes up more often than the income tax issue would.
No, I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
I
and
don't
workforce
doubt that.
would be the other thing that I hear all the time. We're not getting that right. So
Let's, it's funny. These questions are designed to get an idea of where candidates are at. Workforce development was Governor Holcomb's 8 years, right?
Yeah.
It's not sexy, but important. How should the Hoosier be skilled? What is the future of job growth in a Braun administration?
So it'll be, because I come from the place that's generally got the lowest unemployment county rate in town in our state. It's an enterprising place. We got a great public school system. But I was disappointed back when I was on the school board that the guidance there was almost solely into a 4-year degree. When the marketplace says you need about 1/3 of them. And if you want to really keep our talent here, you got to see what jobs we have for that degree. So you were stigmatizing a lot of the other stuff that would be under career and technical education, skills-based, apprenticeships, the things that most businesses say they need more than even the lack of some of the 4-year degrees, which would be mostly STEM degrees in our state. Get that balanced. I'm going to come up with something again, and I don't even think you need to do it legislatively, to get all the information we house as a state and make sure parents, who should be the driver in the education of their own kids, what that information is, so you don't get pushed into something where there's not a job. So you get exported out of state or into the basement. So,
But we're told that in order to get people to stay, you got to have the high-tech jobs. Everything's got to skill up for the high-tech jobs. One of the things, let's go back to Governor Holcomb, discussing how he would have coding as a requirement in K through 12 schools.
that's probably not a bad idea,
you
because
favor
coding, in the business that I run, logistics and distribution, that's trucking and warehousing, we've taken technology to that next level, and some of our best coders have come directly out of high school, because that's something many kids have a knack for, and I never imagined we'd employ that many. That should be a basic skill that's sellable, and you don't necessarily need to do anything other than develop that at high school, along with a host of other types of skills. Something tangible that you can take either to the workplace, which is where most will go directly out of high school, take it to maybe get a brush up with a technical or 2-year degree, but not necessarily the old paradigm that the only way you can be successful. Yes, we need those human capital jobs. Well, I'll get those too, and that's mostly on making sure that
Define human capital job.
that'd be that highest stratum of wage that is going to need to be good at technology, life sciences, a STEM degree.
But we agree that not everybody wants to sit behind a computer keyboard
No.
and type away. And we need to have jobs that satisfy those people as
Yes.
well. Hoosiers come in all shapes and sizes.
Yep, and that's going to be easy because career and technical education, which even in the State House, we were spending almost $1 billion on it when I was there, 15, 16, and 17, and it wasn't getting the result. Employers still weren't getting that. And most of that had to do with there was not a portal of information to where parents and kids could see what the high demand, high wage jobs are, cost of education, no education needed. And the main thing we need to do that I hear universally is create minimally some usable skills like you would have had 30, 40 years ago, metal shop, wood shop, you could weld, and the new stuff that's come along like coding, and make sure those basic skills are available in high school. High aptitude kids can do well if they got some education there, and they may not need to even spend time or waste money on further education. Get it out there to where you can see all the options, transparency.
So let's stick with education. Is education a public good, or is education a consumable product?
I think education would be considered by most as something that, along with your well-being health care, would be 1 and 2, 2 and 1. The older you get, the more you worry about health care. The younger you are, the more edified you want to be and educated. So that public component is never going to go away. That's Medicaid and Medicare at the national level. It's our participation in Medicaid here, but it's breaking the bank. And just because, and I think that's always going to be, especially education, a combination going forward of choice, competition, public education, but anyone that's wanting to monopolize that and isn't wanting to look at better practices, other ways to do it, probably trying to protect a system that needs improvement.
The money should support the system, or the money should support the student?
To me, the money should be what it's primarily doing now, following the student. And the parents need to be in collaboration with their own kids, because obviously when the kid is entering grade school, kindergarten, the parents are going to be the main focus. As they get into middle grades, especially middle school, then the student needs to be brought into the equation. But it still should be the family that's driving what's best for them, and they should have choices. There should be competition. There should be, anytime you can only go to one place or a couple, you're probably not going to have a menu that's going to be pleasing in terms of what you'd want to choose from.
Let us drink. We're cruising through this, people. My God. He is going at a speed, I tell you, with alacrity, I believe, would be the proper
That's a
terminology.
good synonym.
Right? They said, Tony, you're just a radio guy with a pretty face. I said, oh no, I am so much more than that. We are actually doing wonderfully. I think we started a little bit earlier than everybody else. I think that's what happened. The Braun administration begins. What are those first 100 days like?
So the first thing I'll do is just like I do from a business point of view. Say you acquired a new company. We never did that. We grew organically. And generally, it would have been a transition other than that. But when you get an organization that's large, this is a big business, our state government, 30 plus agencies, 30,000 employees. I mean, that's going to be up there with the biggest of any we've got in the state. I'm going to simply take a look, and I'm going to get a ton of input, already have, from state reps and senators that say, this place needs help.
But you've
Something's
already
not
gotten
working.
that. You've already game planned the first 100 days.
And not in the sense of what I can do to dig in once I'm there. And it'll be to go through with a fine-tooth comb everything we're spending money on as a state and the agencies, the apparatus there, to see if it looks functional. And that's going to be easy for me because, again, that's what I did for 37 years in some form or another. And a little business is sometimes harder than a large business because you have no board of directors. You're there by yourself. And if you want to get from here to there, which we did over time, you get those skills. You either like it or you don't. So I'm going to have a head start because I'm getting already a lot of information from people that would like to see it run better. We'll compile all that. I think I'll know where to look first in terms of finding the low-hanging fruit. I'm going to see if we're overstaffed, whether we're understaffed, where you can immediately look at the agencies that regulate a certain part of our state function and see if it's working well.
You have not stated in any level of forum, I take a look at this being done by the state of Indiana and I say that's not valuable. We should do away with that. Has that come across your lips? Has that come across your,
I think it's,
as a platform position?
Whether they'd be an agency, you would just say, hey, it's not needed anymore. Of course, that wouldn't be, you'd phase that out over time. Everything is going to be fair game. It's got to be functional. It's got to be a good return on investment. And if we've ventured into places that the state's not doing well with, or it wouldn't normally be their bailiwick, I think you got to put everything out there. And I'm guessing it's probably like most places. Not everything is going to need extreme remediation. Some will need some pretty drastic stuff, I'm sure, and I'll do it to try to keep it to where if that functionality is needed, you transition into a better version of whatever it's doing. If it plays out that it's just not needed in some fashion, and that's very applicable at the federal level because you can see that we're borrowing $1 trillion now every 6 months.
Right.
That's the plug-in figure for failure when you borrow money in any organization, unless you're growing it and it's intentional. So that is something that, yes, I feel comfortable about how to do it. I think I'm going to accumulate a decent amount of information before you jump the final hurdle in November, and I'm going to be prepared for it. I'm going to look forward to the challenge. And the big difference would be, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to be fearing the risk of doing it. And I think you end up with a much better government as a result of it. And sure, that'll ruffle some feathers.
Let's talk about the knock on you.
Yeah.
The knock on Senator Mike Braun. D.C. was too hard. This is way easier. You got the cash. It's no brainer. Let's go be governor. It's not a serious thing. It's a might as well just stay in the game thing.
Well, I liked what I was doing before better than being a senator. It was an honor, but the founders, when they put the thing together, if you'd ask them what they like better, their farm or their business, I think they showed us which they like better. Washington and Jefferson hurried back to Mount Vernon and Monticello. That was a clear indicator. We've gotten so far away from that. D.C., we're not going to fix it until you get term limits and a balanced budget amendment. Everyone campaigns on it. They get amnesia once they're there. I would have never done that more than 2 terms. I don't know if you knew that or not. I ran on that and would have never reneged on it. Life is always interesting. If you wanted to run for governor, it'd either be this round or you'd have to wait 9 years. And it's going to get worse in D.C., and that's leaving there having the most effective record as a legislator of any freshman senator since 18. and in the areas of healthcare, education, and agriculture, more than the veterans that you got to wheel out of there after 2-3 decades. So proud of the record there. We solved nearly 13,000 cases for Hoosiers that get entangled with that place, way more per capita than the typical senator. Here, I view this as being where you can take a state that's doing pretty well and you can take it to that next level, running it entrepreneurially, taking some political risk, not being afraid to fail, and trying to make it a better way. So I disagree with that point of view that some people might have. I went there knowing that I wasn't going to do it more than 2 terms, and you measure what we've done in what the 6 years I will have spent there. I'll put it up against anybody that's come in there. That doesn't mean you got to stay there for another term, and I'm not doing this just to stay in the business of government. I'd rather be hunting and fishing more, or
But
maybe
you could
jumping.
be. I think that's there's a point to
But
that.
you know what?
Which you totally could be.
And I put that as a priority, and I still do. And I do that. I recharge my batteries. That's why I've only stayed out there 6 weeks, I think, and nearly 5.5 years now. So, no, I go to bed late and get up early. No one's going to outwork me. And if people can't see that by now, then I got to make a better case of it. But when you can set the agenda, and you've got the tutorial, which to me is about as brief as it can be to be in the business of politics. I would have never done that earlier because my priority was building a business, which that was a dream come true, that became a national one. Never had a board of directors doing it. 3 of your 4 kids, how lucky is that when your own kids want to have anything to do with the business you've been associated with?
Right.
And then decided that's the proper order to get into government. Not as you get out of law school, pivot into elected or appointed office, and you come from the farm system of politics. I think I did it the right way, and I think more people ought to consider it. And if you like our free enterprise system, if you want to keep government small, and you want the private sector to stay strong, but yet responsive and productive, I think that's the way you get it done in the long run.
Take a sip. We are moving. We are good. I think we're almost done. I did have a question for you that I didn't have for others. Let me see how I want to. I almost want to see how I want to ask the question. Is being governor, in your view, an easier lift than being a senator?
2 different types of challenges. One's a legislator, one's an executive. You're setting the agenda, you got to get the legislature to come along with you. In this case, I served with most of the committee chairs, 15, 16, and 17. I think I'll get along with all of them. I'm going to have some ideas that may be new to them, but I think when you've got a supermajority like we've got, what are we going to do with it? That's why I call it the freedom and opportunity agenda. I want to make sure we do not fall into the trap of growing our government at the expense of our private sector here in this state. I want the emphasis on freedom and opportunity, not picking winners and losers. If you're in the Senate, you're having to react to whatever the executive branch does. I even found a good way to counterpunch back at them. It was our Senate office that dusted off the Congressional Review Act that took that crazy idea of forcing a vaccination onto every employee when COVID was in the rearview mirror down to 100 employees. That was still going to be pushed through by the Biden administration. I got 2 Democratic senators to go along with that. The Supreme Court saw it and said that is unconstitutional. So even as a legislator, I don't get any credit for that kind of stuff because most of the media that's mainstream is never going to give a conservative much credibility or credit when it comes to how you use the tools that you're working within. We did it again on ESG. That was the first time Biden had to veto a bill because marshaled it, it drew attention to it. So I'm one of 100 there. Here, you are the CEO, and you've got to get along with your legislature, which I will, and I'm going to be the most entrepreneurial governor I think we've ever had. I'm going to challenge the citizens of Indiana to be telling me what's important, just like I've invited along the way as being a senator, and I'm looking forward to the challenge. So, proud of our record in the Senate. That place is going to get worse before it gets better on the numbers and the finance side of it. To me, it was no different than the forks in the road I had to pick for 37 years to grow a company like that. Politics is actually easier. Here, at least, you don't have to earn the money. It's given to you. Just be smart enough not to spend more than you take in and be entrepreneurial with it. Sad thing is, most senators, most governors aren't entrepreneurial. They're risk averse, and they don't really know how to take advantage of that opportunity.
My conversation with Senator Mike Braun, candidate for governor here in the state of Indiana. This video, all the videos with all the Republican candidates are right there at WIBC.com. Of course, we'll have shorts and reels going out all over the place, but this is the only spot where you can get all of the interviews will be at WIBC.com from all of the candidates. So be sure to check it out. Check out all of the candidates, and then the primary in May. Go vote. Senator Mike Braun, thank you.
You bet.